second segment here. You have probably heard about the Pope's statement this morning. And one thing, by the way, it was in a letter that he wrote. One thing I want to mention before we get to that is the Vatican, according to the Times in London, the Vatican has opened the door to the possibility of married priests, a move that would go against an established church tradition. Archbishop Pietro Parolin, who will be the number 2 in the Roman Catholic Church when he becomes Secretary of State next month, so he's right at the top of the pyramid. He's one step below the Pope here. He declared that the priestly vow of celibacy derived from an age-old rule but was not Catholic dogma. He said it's not a dogma of the church, and it can be discussed because it's an ecclesiastical tradition. Now, I frankly think that this is absolutely terrific news. You know, it's always been interesting to me that the Roman Catholics regard the Apostle Peter as the first pope. Well, we know without any question from the New Testament that the first pope was married. One of the early miracles that Jesus did, according to Mark 1, is he went into Peter's home after synagogue, and Peter's mother-in-law was sick with a fever, and Jesus went into her, spoke to her, touched her, and healed her, raised her up, and she began serving them. So we know that Peter had a mother-in-law. What does that mean? It means he had a wife, and he was there in the home. Maybe she was living with them or whatever, but we know, therefore, that's conclusive without any question about it, that Peter was married. And then Paul in 1 Corinthians 9 says talking about himself and Barnabas, Paul was single, but he said, do we not have the right to travel with a believing wife just as Cephas or Peter and the other apostles do? So all the other apostles were married. They traveled with their wives, and he specifically singles out Peter as an apostle who traveled with a believing wife. So the first pope was married. I think this would be a real advance for the Catholic Church. I think, frankly, the reason they've had such a problem with pedophilia in the church, the reason they've had such a problem with pedophilia is because of this tradition right here. And so it's encouraging to me to see that they do not consider this Catholic dogma. Now, I didn't know that till I read this. This is the number 2 guy in the Vatican. This is not Catholic dogma. So this is right at the top of the pyramid. I'd always thought it was Catholic dogma. It is not. It's an age-old rule. It's an age-old tradition. But the number 2 guy in the Vatican says, look, we can discuss this. We can revisit this. We can reconsider this. And I hope that they will. Because what happened, the history of the Roman Catholic Church is, men grow up and they want to be married. They want to know the joys of intimacy with a wife. They want to be able to have children and raise a family, experience the joys and the delights and the challenges that come with all of that. That's deep in the heart of most men. Not all men, obviously. Some are very content to be single. But what happened is the Roman Catholic Church began having a great deal of difficulty in about 1960. They began having a great deal of difficulty recruiting priests because priests, more and more men, wanted to be married and raise a family, and they had to choose between marriage and family and the priesthood. And more of them were choosing marriage and family. They're having a very difficult time filling their seminaries, recruiting potential priests to come to their seminaries. Well, what happened then is homosexuals had no interest in marrying women, no interest in having children, and so they began to filter into these Roman Catholic seminaries because they were perfectly content to take the vow that they would not marry a woman. They wouldn't enter into a conventional man-woman marriage. They were fine with that. They didn't want to do that. So you had these homosexuals now, these young homosexuals filtering into Roman Catholic seminaries in the early part of the 1960s, and there they were. And we've talked about the connection between homosexuality and pedophilia. It is inescapable. Peer-reviewed journals have indicated that about a third of all of the sexual offenses against children are committed by homosexuals. Homosexual males are like 10 times more likely to offend against children than heterosexual males are. So there's a real connection between homosexuality and pedophilia, and that's what happened to the Roman Catholic Church. There were so many homosexual priests. Now, not all of them. Again, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that even the great majority of Roman Catholic priests were homosexuals. I'm not saying that. Many of them were very sincere about their vow of chastity. They kept it. They were heterosexual. If they had been free to marry, it would have been to a woman and all that. So please don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that all priests in the Roman Catholic Church are homosexual or anything close to that, but there were a significant number that were, and that's where this problem with pedophilia in the church came. And I wonder if part of the reconsideration by the Roman Catholic Church of this rule, and it's a tradition. Again, I repeat, this is a very, very important, this is really in the nature of a historic breakthrough, frankly, ladies and gentlemen, because the Roman Catholic Church, this could be the thing that protects them from future instances of pedophilia in the future. If they open the door to priests to be married, to be in the Roman Catholic Church, to be married in the Roman Catholic Church, and then to go into the priesthood in the Roman Catholic Church. I think that would be a huge step forward, and I think it would. And I wonder if maybe part of the reconsideration here is they have realized, the Roman Catholic Church has realized the problem that they have created for themselves by this tradition, which is not scriptural. It's not a biblical tradition, and they're admitting it. It's not even Catholic dogma. It's just an age-old rule. The problem they created for themselves by basically setting aside the fact that the very first pope was a happily married man. Focal Point, AFR Talk, back in 2.